The first sign that something was deeply, irreversibly wrong wasn't an angry text or a late-night confession. It was the email notification. A cold, digital slap to the face at 7:34 a.m. on a Tuesday. I was mid-sip on my coffee, scrolling through the usual morning spam, when I saw it. A transaction alert from my dedicated future fund savings account. The one I'd been meticulously feeding for 5 years, every bonus, every tax return, every penny I could spare. The total was 0. I spat out my coffee. Not a dramatic movie spray, just a little, pathetic puff of lukewarm disappointment. I clicked the email, heart hammering against my ribs. The transaction history showed a single, clean transfer. Tell out the recipient? My own checking account. That, in itself, was confusing. Then I saw the next line, a transfer from my checking account to an external account labeled only as RV Escrow. RV stood for Riley Vance, my girlfriend. And that, my friends, is how I found out I was $100,000 poorer and dating a master manipulator. You won't believe what she did next. The illusion of normalcy. Riley and I had been together for 3 years. 3 years of what I genuinely thought was a solid, if slightly fast-paced relationship. We lived in my apartment. My name was the only one on the lease, a fact my lawyer would later call my only strategic decision in the entire saga. We had plans. Big plans. The kind that involved a down payment, a dog named Winston, and a questionable IKEA couch we both loved. That $112,000 was our down payment. Well, technically, it was my savings that we had both agreed to pool for our house. She was supposed to contribute the final $20,000 once we found the right place. Riley was a whirlwind. Creative, energetic, and she had this infectious, relentless optimism. She worked in interior design, the kind of job that was feast or famine. When she was feasting, she'd splurge on me, on trips, on fancy dinners. When it was famine, I'd cover the rent, the groceries, and her occasional emergency credit card bill. I didn't mind. I figured that's what partners did. I was the rock, the steady paycheck, the guy who worried about compound interest. 2 weeks before the zero balance email, we'd had the usual conversation. Are you ready to start house hunting seriously? I'd asked, watching her pick the perfect avocado. Oh, absolutely, she'd beamed. I've even talked to a mortgage broker, just getting the lay of the land. We're so close, babe. You've done such an amazing job saving. That last part, the compliment, should have been a warning. It had the distinct flavor of a farewell speech. I didn't call her. I drove home from the office, the knot in my stomach tightening with every mile. I needed to see her face. I needed to see the flicker of guilt, the slip in the mask. I found her in the living room, surrounded by mood boards and fabric swatches, sipping a latte. The picture of domestic bliss, except for the fact she had just financially detonated my life. I didn't yell. My tone was terrifyingly flat, even to me. Where is the money, Riley? She didn't even look up at first. What money, honey? Don't. The $112,000, but I had to do it this way, Mark. Had to do what? Steal my entire life savings? It's not stealing, darling. It's an investment in our future. A necessary step that you, being so financially conservative, would never have had the guts to take. I actually laughed. A harsh, dry, incredulous sound. You call liquidating my retirement fund an investment. She stood up, walked over to me, and placed her hands on my arms, that familiar, manipulative warmth designed to disarm me. But it didn't work this time. I felt nothing but cold rage. Mark, I bought a condo, she announced, as if she'd just announced she'd bought me a puppy. It's perfect. 2 bedrooms, incredible natural light, and the HOA is surprisingly reasonable. I've put the money down. Your money, yes, as the down payment. The mortgage is in my name. My blood ran cold. In your name? What about our house? This is our house, but here's the smart part. She leaned in, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. The market is going crazy. We couldn't wait. You know I can get a better rate because of my freelance status, the government incentives, and honestly, my credit score is better. She stepped back, her arms crossed, and delivered the knockout blow. Look, you were being so slow, so cautious. I took the initiative. I secured our future. Honestly, you should be grateful. That phrase, you should be grateful. It echoed in the silence of my apartment, a monument to her staggering narcissism. I kept the initial details brief. Riley moved the down payment money. I need advice. David's response was immediate and damning. Mark, she hasn't bought our house. She's bought her asset using your cash. This isn't a surprise gift. This is financial fraud and theft. The second call was to a family law attorney, recommended by David, a no-nonsense woman named Sarah who specialized in unmarried property disputes, a phrase that sounded far too polite for what Riley had done. I laid out the facts. The savings account was solely in my name. The transfers were all documented. Her condo deed was solely in her name. Sarah's assessment was a bucket of icy water. The good news, Mark, is that it was your sole account. She simply transferred funds from an account you had given her access to, which is a breach of fiduciary duty. But it's still your money. The bad news is getting it back from a real estate closing is complicated. We need to file immediately a notice of claim against the property. We have to essentially freeze the equity before she takes out a second loan or flips it. That evening, I finally confronted Riley again, this time with a lawyer's words echoing in my head. I walked into the apartment, my apartment, and saw her packing a suitcase. "Where are you going?" I asked, suddenly realizing the extent of her plan. "Oh, just moving into the new place, of course," she said, zipping the bag. "Closing is tomorrow. Don't worry, I'll take the duvet cover. It really ties the room together. Riley, if you close on that condo, I will sue you for the full amount." She stopped, turned, and gave me the most condescending smile I have ever seen. "You won't, Mark. You're too nice. And besides, I told you, this is for us. I just needed to secure the primary asset in my name for financing reasons. Once we're married, we'll move you on to the deed." She packed the last item, a hideous ceramic cat statue I hated, and walked to the door. "Oh, and you have exactly 1 month to find a new place to live," she said, glancing at the lease hanging on the fridge. "I'm terminating our cohabitation agreement. I need to reevaluate what I want in a partner. Right now, I need someone who trusts me." And with that, she walked out, leaving me in the quiet apartment, less a girlfriend, and $112,000 poorer, but suddenly, strangely, free. 1 week later. The legal strategy. The next week was a blur of legal paperwork, frozen bank accounts, and an emergency therapy session where I mostly just outlined the financial timeline. My lawyer, Sarah, was a machine. Riley's lawyer is claiming the money was a gift. Sarah reported over a conference call. Standard defense. They're saying you willingly gave her access to the account and that you intended the money to be used for the purchase of an asset that would benefit the relationship. A gift. I almost choked on the word. I have 5 years of texts discussing our down payment, our future, and the spreadsheets I used to track the contributions. None of it says, "Here, Riley. Buy yourself a condo." "Exactly," Sarah said calmly. "We have the documentation. We have the account statements showing your name as the sole account holder. We have the paper trail proving the money was transferred to an escrow account solely in her name, immediately after an identical transfer from your savings. The burden of proof is heavily on her. Her defense relies on your emotional weakness, that you'll drop the case." That night, I received a text from an unknown number. It was Riley. "Look, this is ridiculous. Tell your lawyer to back off. You're causing a huge mess. I already told you I'd put you on the deed after we get married. Why are you making this so hard? I thought you loved me." My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I typed, "I love me more than I love that ceramic cat you took." Then I deleted it. Instead, I took Sarah's advice. I didn't engage. I texted back a single professional line. "Please direct all future communication regarding this matter to my legal counsel, Sarah Davies." The silence that followed was the sweetest sound I'd heard in months. The control was back in my hands. 3 weeks later. The showdown. The legal process moved with the frustrating speed of a melting glacier, but the pressure was clearly getting to Riley. Sarah successfully filed the notice of claim on her condo, which essentially meant Riley couldn't sell it, remortgage it, or even rent it out without a massive headache. The closing had gone through, but now the asset was tainted, frozen in a legal gray zone. I walked into the conference room and saw her sitting there, looking every bit the successful designer, immaculately dressed, perfectly composed. Her lawyer was a slick-backed, older man who clearly thought this was an open and shut case of a jilted boyfriend. The mediator laid out the demands. My side, full return of the dollars text, $112,450, plus all legal fees. Her side, dismiss the claim, accept that the money was a relationship contribution, and walk away. Riley spoke first, her voice dripping with artificial sadness. "Mark, I can't believe you're doing this. You know I did this for us. This condo is appreciating daily. I took a risk that benefited both of us. If you just drop this, in a year, we could sell it and make a huge profit. I'm just trying to make you rich. I took a sip of water, looked her straight in the eye, and spoke calmly, methodically, just as Sarah had coached me. Riley, let's be clear. You didn't invest in our future. You committed conversion, the civil equivalent of theft. The money was held in an account solely in my name. The mortgage is solely in your name. There is no document, text, or email that shows I agreed to relinquish my sole ownership of those funds to facilitate you acquiring a personal asset. I pulled out a printout of the final spreadsheet I'd made, the one detailing the mortgage calculations for our theoretical house. This is the last spreadsheet I shared with you. The line item here, $112,000. You simply exploited my trust and access to my accounts. Her composure cracked. Her eyes flashed with true anger. Oh, you are such a petty small man. You're sacrificing an incredible investment just to prove a point. I gave you a chance to be part of something, and you're throwing it away. After everything I did for you, you really should just be grateful I handled the hard part. The phrase hit the air again. Grateful. It was the key to her entire twisted logic. I felt a surge of adrenaline, but I kept my voice level. Riley, I said, leaning forward slightly. You told me I should be grateful that you financially abused me. You took my security and called it a favor. That tells me everything I need to know about your character. I looked at the mediator. We're not settling for anything less than the full amount. This isn't about the money anymore. It's about setting a legal precedent that theft, even masked as initiative, has consequences. Sarah gave a tiny, almost imperceptible nod. The mediation collapsed. We were going to court. 2 months later, the verdict and the calm. The legal process was brutal, focusing on the paper trail. Riley's defense of a gift crumbled under the weight of my meticulous savings records, the joint plans for a different house, and the lack of any formal documentation supporting her claim. 2 months after the confrontation, the court ruled in my favor. The judge ordered Riley to pay the full amount of dollars text back to me, plus a substantial portion of my legal fees, which, thanks to the slow pace of justice, had ballooned. Because the money was tied up in her condo, she was ordered to either sell the property immediately or refinance with a private loan to pay the judgment. She was forced to sell. The dream condo she'd stolen my future to buy became her nightmare. She ended up losing money on the closing after the legal fees and the hasty sale in a soft market. I stared at the balance, a wave of profound, exhausted relief washing over me. It wasn't the feeling of being rich, it was the feeling of being unrobbed. Personal growth and reflection. A year later, I'm doing fine. More than fine. I used the money, my money, and finally bought my own place. It's a small, slightly fixer-upper house, but it has a massive backyard and space for a dog named Winston. The down payment was completely clean, completely mine. The lesson I learned was simple, but essential. Financial boundaries are a sign of respect, not a lack of love. I used to think that true partnership meant total, blind trust. Now I know it means total, transparent documentation. No matter how much you love someone, if you're financially entangled, the paper trail has to be clean. Sole accounts need to stay sole. If a joint purchase is made, the names on the loan and the deed must match the contribution. Trust, but verify with an escrow agreement. Riley vanished from my life entirely. I heard through David's network that she'd moved on, selling another fantastical story of being betrayed by a bitter ex who ruined her investment. Her narrative hadn't changed. She was still the victim, still the entrepreneurial genius, and I was still the small, petty man who should have been grateful. But I am grateful. I'm grateful she showed me who she was before I signed a marriage license. I'm grateful I had the savings to fight her. And I'm profoundly grateful I got my money back, not just for the security it offered, but for the vindication it provided. I may have lost 3 years of my life to a manipulative relationship, but I gained $100,000 worth of wisdom. And that, I can assure you, is an investment that pays compound interest forever. Thanks for listening. If you've ever had to fight a legal battle for what was rightfully yours, let me know in the comments. And if you're considering pooling finances with a new partner, I've got one piece of advice for you. Get it in writing. See you in the next one.